Great. So I'm lucky enough to be joined by Jada, who is a good friend of Hello Sunday Morning. Has been very generous with her time and sharing her stories, both at our events, but also in the public and through media that we've done, which has always made me just feel so grateful to have you as someone that could talk to your experience so authentically, because it resonates so strongly with a type of drinking within our culture that you've kind of come from and experienced. And so I'm so glad we could have a quick chat today about yourself and experiencing of COVID.
Yeah. Look, thanks for having me. I love seeing you, and obviously attribute all of my success in not drinking anymore thanks to Hello Sunday Morning. Being part of it since that, and telling my story again and again, I think just kind of reaffirms where I'm at now, which is fabulous. So I'm really happy. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Dana. So maybe for a lot of people watching this, in our members and beyond, they might not have heard your story yet. Perhaps you could take us back to the beginning and tell us about your relationship with alcohol before coming on the Daybreak, and then how it evolved over time.
Yeah, sure. I always say I was always a big drinker. Like I celebrated that almost, and I thought it was just part of who I was. And I always made excuses for why I drank a lot. There was times when my parents, I'm sure, would always say, "Gosh, she's drinking too much again and again and again," and I'd always find reasons as to why I could justify it. And I didn't really see it as much of a problem back then. I knew I was partying a lot. I was in my 20s and in my 30s, and I kind of just continued on. I have lots of friends that are musicians and own pubs and bars, and I always found ways and means of drinking. I work in the events industry as well, and there's lots of drinking that's involved in our networking and stuff like that on the job. So I sort of always found excuses for it. Didn't see too much of a problem with it, knowing that I didn't really have an overly healthy relationship with alcohol. But I guess I just looked at it as it was stages of my life that kind of I thought would probably come to an end when I did meet my now husband and have children. Sadly for me, it just wasn't the case. I just didn't stop. I sort of thought once motherhood hit me, I wouldn't really have the time or the energy or the need or want to drink again. But I always found that I just went back to it. Like it was the thing that I went back to at every stage, and it was never positive. So yeah, it sort of, once I became a mum, I breastfed my son for a year and a half. So I hadn't drunk for a long time. There was a year or 9 months of being pregnant, then a year and a half of feeding. But he was a really tough baby. He was really hard. He slept for 40 minutes at a time for 2 years. So every 40 minutes I was like rocking him back to sleep in my arms, trying to get him back in the cot without waking him. And then 40 minutes later, same thing. So it was a really hard time. The sleep deprivation was already there. I already felt terrible. I was fighting with my husband because I had no sleep and he didn't understand. And so I think I almost just thought, well, as soon as I finished breastfeeding him, I was like, that's it. I'll start drinking again now. And it'd been a long time, and I looked at it like an easy way out of the really crappy feeling I was feeling already. And I figured, why not drink at night and have fun if I'm going to feel crappy tomorrow anyway? So then I found myself going back to it. And I do also mention sometimes that it was a way to reconnect with my husband. And it definitely was. It was us two trying to finally getting him back, the little kid, back to bed, and then sit down together and drink a bottle of wine. And we always went further than that because we'd start chatting again, and it would, those sorts of memories would come back. And I think it was positive for a short period of time until it just kind of always went too far. And for me, it was just, I just didn't stop. Once I started, I would drink the bottle. Like it wasn't something I thought about in the daytime. I didn't hide bottles from people. I actually celebrated that I drank a lot. I didn't really hide it. But when I started drinking, I would drink a bottle. And if there was 2 bottles, I would drink that. Like it was just kind of, for me, something that I know that I just didn't really have an off switch. I really didn't have an off switch. And I enjoyed doing it when I did it. So I did, yeah. So that kind of was where I was at after my first child. And Within that time too, I ended up having 2 miscarriages. So we kind of went through a bit of tragedy and, always found a reason to be drinking more and more again. Fell pregnant with my second child at the end of that same year. And then 9 months of no drinking, and life was great again because I was, off drinking. So 9 months I loved pregnancy, and people are always like, how can you enjoy that? But I think it was because I was never hungover. So to be honest, it was so great because for me it was like, every morning I woke up and felt great comparatively. And so, I went through those 9 months, and then she was born, and she was so much easier than my first. So I breastfed her for a year. So then there was no drinking, but the minute I stopped feeding her, straight back to the same thing, and that was like August of 2017. So that was like, it was almost instant. Like she stopped breastfeeding, and a week later I realized that a few times a week I was hungover again. I thought, gosh, life is hard again. And, everything was more difficult. I had so much anxiety. Like I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I would be anxiety ridden and wonder how I was going to get through the day again. And here I had 2 little kids, and I thought, the screaming, how can I deal with that? So it was I just realized then, this is a habit that I've gone back to after each child again, back to, binge drinking that I was doing prior. And I had no idea that I was going to do that. Like I just thought life was so good at that point, and what was the need to do that? But I just realized it was a habit that I'd gotten into, and I really needed to break it. So it only lasted another 6 weeks. I only drank again for 6 weeks after I stopped feeding her, between the August and the October, before I stopped. Because I saw the slippery slope that was happening really quickly, and I thought, this is what I did before. Yeah.
What was it like, when you got to that 6-week mark? What did you, was it like, this is it, or what? Yeah, talk me through that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was so fed up with myself. Like it only took 6 weeks for me to remember all the feelings that I'd had previously, and it was just like a mountain had just landed on top of me and said, you can't do anything right. Like I felt like the worst mother. I felt like a terrible wife. I was probably screaming at my husband a lot. I felt like I wasn't working. I was trying to go back to work too, and I just didn't feel as productive. I actually felt all of a sudden like I was so fed up with myself, and I really looked at it like I could not win at anything. I wasn't kicking any goals. I was really down on myself, and I sort of looked at myself and thought, can I hate myself anymore right now? Like, how could I have got to this point again when I wasn't here recently? I'd all just been through this beautiful pregnancy and had this little baby, and then all of a sudden I was back to that point that I'd been at throughout my life. But it was so recognizable this time, and I think other times I didn't recognize it until it was way too late, and it was more hindsight. This time I thought, this is obvious now, and I have to get out of this before I do this for a long period of time. Yeah.
And those initial weeks, like when you decided to, did you originally decide that, I'm not going to drink, or you're like, I'm going to cut back, or what was the sort of thinking behind that? You're like,
I woke up one morning, like I remember it so clearly, and I remember waking up and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this again tomorrow, and how am I going to even get through today? And it was interesting. I had watched the SBS Insight episode, and I'd seen Hello Sunday Morning mentioned on there, and the Daybreak app. And when I'd seen that, I really connected with watching some of the other women on there, because it was just like, that's me, they've got a business and they've got children, and they just had I had the same sorts of feelings. So I remember thinking, I'm not the only person in the world out there that thinks that their relationship with alcohol is unhealthy, doesn't know that there is other ways and means out there to actually, find resources like you guys with these sorts of help. So I kind of remember thinking, okay, so I'm not alone in this. I'm not by myself in this, but I know how bad I feel right now, and I know I don't want to feel like this for any longer. So my kind of thought at the beginning, interestingly, was that I wasn't going to talk about it with anybody. And I still laugh now that I didn't even tell my husband. Poor guy was in the dark about this for ages. I just sort of went, I'm not drinking for a while. I made it really blasé to him. I was a bit like, no, I'm just not going to drink for a while. You just get whatever you want, and I wasn't going to put any kind of expectations on myself, because it really scared me I expected enough of myself already. I didn't want his and everybody else's expectations on me either.
Mm.
So I was kind of really blasé about it. And I kind of said to myself, I think I'm just going to make a plan for the future in general. And I didn't even really put a time on it. I kind of said, just do a month for now. You know, it was a bit of a baby steps type scenario. So I planned this month of not drinking. And luckily his parents were actually in town. So they didn't really notice because I would just leave them and he had someone else to drink with because his parents were from Perth. So I was sort of like, oh, I'm just heading to bed now, jump into bed, jump on Daybreak, chat to some friends on Daybreak, you know, and I also did Annie Grace's alcohol experiment.
Yeah.
So I sort of sat down and started a journal and did a few positive things and they didn't really notice. And it kind of was good timing because it wasn't highlighted to my husband that he was drinking by himself. And then I did a month. So the month was done, but I had done a month before. Like I'd done your dry Julys and your Feb fasts with probably about 18 golden tickets within the 30 days. You know, I never actually did 30 days. But this time I'd done the month and I sort of thought, oh, but I can do 3 months. Come on. So I did. I kind of made a 3-month goal. And the 3-month goal went over Christmas and New Year's. So this was like I started on the 19th of October. So this was November, December and January. So by the end of the 3 months, it was like, oh my gosh, for starters, I've just done 3 months over some really big holiday season, you know, festivities and stuff. I've been away at Jervis Bay. I've done Christmas. I've done New Year's Eve even. And it kind of got to the point where I realised on top of it being quite easy and me really enjoying life in that time, I felt so amazing. Like, when have I not drunk for 3 months since I started? I'm 42 now. So I started drinking when I was 18. So in all that time, I've never had 3 months off. So I think health-wise, I felt phenomenal. Plus, just by the fact that I looked back over the holiday period and went, oh my God, I just sort of went on this holiday. And whilst I was there, I didn't drink at all. I didn't miss it. My family was drinking. My husband was drinking. My friends would come down for New Year's Eve and everyone was drinking around me. And I really felt, you know, but I'm one of those people too that once I make a decision, I'm pretty determined to stick to it. And I kind of get a bit gung-ho about it. So I was really, I guess, almost to the point where I was so proud of what I was doing that no one even questioned it. And because I was there with my family who were so supportive, you know, it was the perfect timing really for me to do it when I was sort of out of Sydney, but also sort of celebrating with family. So it went really, really well. And that when 3 months was up, I just decided to keep going. So just sort of one day plodded on after the next. And I've never really counted days. I've always counted sort of months and years. So yeah, just sort of past the 2.5-year mark recently. But it really just was one of those things that by then I was talking about it a lot and everyone realised that it was a long-term goal for me and it wasn't just going to be a sort of month thing. The next thing I did was my 40th birthday party, which was a kind of delayed one, a year late. My husband and I had a joint one and that was in April. So that was the first big celebration that we did. And by then I was so proud of what I was doing that no way was anybody going to try and tell me to have a drink because they could see it written all over my face. Even if I was faking it in the beginning, which I probably was, faking that I thought it was amazing. By now I'm really selling it because I really do. But back then I think it was a bit of a fake it till you make it so that nobody even sees a glimmer that you're questioning yourself. Because once you're doubting yourself, they see a way in to say, well, just have a drink then. I was like so, you know, gung-ho about what I was doing and so proud of it. And I had all these non-alcoholic drinks there as options for myself. I had all these different beers and I got them from some great places. So I had this real plethora of options and I was making mocktails and stuff. So everybody was looking at me like, wow, look what she's got. So yeah, no one even thought to try and, you know, persuade me to drink again. So I think by then I was feeling so fabulous too. I was selling it.
Have you found, like, I know, you know, when I've stopped drinking or like with people on our membership, you almost go through this burst of, you know, excitement about it and, you know, all these changes happen and it's a real difference. But then there's almost this settling into a new stasis of, okay, this is now my reality. Like, and some of the kind of pointed bits of reality, you know, disappointments, challenges, they come into the picture. and now you haven't got alcohol to escape from. So you're just, completely experiencing life as it is with no blunting of it at all. Have you found that in your life, and what do you, find yourself doing or thinking when those sharp moments happen?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is just so normal for me now that it's a non-event. Like no one even notices now that I don't drink. And everyone's sort of, the question I get asked quite often, which is linked to that, I guess, is that what do you do to relax? Like, because they literally think that, or what do you do when you're stressed? Like you're saying, in those kind of pointy moments. And it's almost like they don't happen as much. Like I don't need to relax as much, and I don't get stressed as much. Those sorts of things that used to be big deals to me were almost probably because my patience levels were a lot lower.
Yeah.
And I kind of noticed that was my fallback. I don't really need that as much anymore. So I haven't really had to find things to rely on as much.
Yeah.
I walk a lot. I do kind of, I guess I've kind of started a lot of things like that and put a lot more wellness sides of things into place. Like I did start a gratitude journal as soon as I stopped drinking, and that's been really helpful. And I think everybody should do that every single day, even if it's just a simple 3 things that you can write down, those sorts of things. And being mindful, I think just being a bit more present in every kind of aspect has really helped me. I don't find the need to kind of do that, but I do find, I say that, but if I'm in a social sort of situation, it does help to have drink options. Like who wants to be offered water the whole time, or soda water and lime? There's only so many lime and sodas I can have. So just to be able to have those options there that are adult type drinks, I find that is one of the really helpful things for me in the de-stressing. It almost fools me. Like I never end up obviously being drunk or hungover from it. So I'm the one laughing the next day. But during the time when I'm being social, I've still got a drink in my hand, and I feel like it's an adult type scenario. I'm not going to drink Coca-Cola or lime and soda. So I sort of get fooled myself, I think, by still having an out in terms of a drink option, because I think that is just a habit, and that is sort of something that you get used to doing in social situations. But in terms of stress, I'm just so less stressed. I really am. And I have so much more patience. I always say, now, like my patience level with everything, and my children and my husband, like I just think before I speak now. It's so much. There's so much more. I'm so much more calculated in my, tone and my sort of sentence structure. Before it was probably like whatever came out.
Yeah.
Now I think, oh, look at that, well done, and I give myself a little clap every now and then. Like I just go, gosh, like look how far I've come, because I know I used to fly off the handle, and a lot of that really was just not having the patience. Because for me, I was either hungover, slightly hungover, because even if I'd had, even if I'd stopped at 1 bottle of wine, I'd feel pretty hungover the next day. So even then, I wasn't hungover to the point of not being able to do anything, but I was just never 100%. And I always had less patience and, a little bit, kind of, it was harder to get through the day, that's for sure.
Mm. And you said earlier that, having a glass of wine was your chance to reconnect with your husband after probably busy days and then kids, and a lot of our members have this same experience. How's it been, with your relationship, with you not drinking and your partner drinking, and trying to find those, really important moments together?
Yeah, I don't notice it so much anymore because it is just so normal for us the way that we work now, and it's been so long. He still drinks. Don't worry about that. Everyone always says, "Oh, how does that work?" And there is occasions when sometimes I just go, "I cannot be here anymore. You can stay at your friend's place, and I'm taking the kids." And there has been a few of those, and it has, less on one hand. I must say, has not happened very often. But sometimes I look around and think, oh my gosh, that used to be me. And, did I really act that dumb? I think that when I see drunk people now. But for us, the one thing I find hard is I don't go to restaurants much anymore. Yeah. The restaurant thing, obviously we can't now anyway, but the restaurant thing I find a little bit hard sometimes because they don't have great drink options. And I always paired food and wine, so I do find the restaurant thing a bit hard. So we've just been doing different things. We might do movies, and we've done a couple of, outdoor cinemas and stuff like that. So I just got a bit more creative with the way that we went on dates, I think, because
Yeah,
the candlelit romantic dinner thing in a restaurant, it's probably less, inviting to me now without the
totally.
kind of drink options. Yeah. So I think we just kind of got a bit creative with that. And then now when we're social, I just take whatever drink options I want along,
Mm,
make sure that they're there.
lovely. And what advice would you give to, um, people are going through COVID right now, and drinking rates are going up, and there's this real sense of anxiety, and consumption is increasing as a result. What advice would you give to people that might be considering for the first time to take a break, or perhaps are on their second or third try, as you've been through and been and wanting to give it a good nudge now? What would you what would you wish to impart on someone
Yeah,
like
look,
that?
I think the best thing that I did was to have as many resources as possible at that time, like having Daybreak and having meeting people in the same situation and really connecting with them. It was definitely one thing. I also did that alcohol experiment, and I'm such a researcher. Like, I love to learn stuff about why does that happen, and so for me to be like learning that at the same time, like some people take the emotional side of things, some people really like the research side, and for me, when I was researching what alcohol was doing and why, and I was like, oh, okay, and I understood a lot more. So I took the emotion side with Daybreak by meeting and connecting, and then I kind of had that research side too.
Mm,
And then I started reading books about it. So I really kind of came at it from lots of different angles. And I think that really helped because I was reading other people's stories. I was then researching stuff about it. And I kind of just, once I was, had made that decision and kind of really decided to, I guess, run with it, I just had to be proud of what I was doing and just keep saying that, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I've decided to do now. And people often say, like, will you ever drink again? And I always say, like, it's interesting, but that's not an important question to me. Like, no, I don't think that I will. That's usually that's my answer. But that's not the important question. The important question to me is, do you ever want to drink again? It's
mm,
not, will you ever drink again? Because who knows? Like, I can't actually say that. But do I ever want to drink again? No, I don't. Like, right now, the answer to that is no. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be no forever because, like, look how great life is for me now.
yeah.
But I think it really is just that ownership on, it's all about what you want. It's
Mm,
not about what you're actually doing now. It's really just about the choices that you make. And I remember that was my word of the year that next year was choose. Because I
mm,
realized that it's really just a choice. Like, for me, it was at the point where I could choose to do this or that. Like, it really came down to being that simple, even though it wasn't that simple. It really was, when it came down to it, a choice. So every day I just made the choices for that day. So the choices for that day was write a little gratitude note, read a little about this, and connect with some people on Daybreak. So I kind of made those choices. And I think by taking the ownership of that, rather than a scary kind of, set up these big goals and plans, just the ownership of what that meant for that day was all I needed. So that's what I would do. And yeah, just those wellness things, making sure that you're feeling well, whether it's walking or whether it's mindfulness or all those sorts of little things, they really do make a difference.
amazing advice. Jada, thank you so much for your time
Pleasure.
today and sharing your experience. I know it'll be really inspiring and valuable for our members. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.